Welcome to Shaping Healthcare, a podcast by CitiusTech. Some of the great minds in the world are constantly striving to solve the healthcare industry's greatest challenges with technology, creativity, and agility. With every episode of the Shaping Healthcare podcast, we will take you deeper into the world of healthcare and life sciences and give you a perspective into what it takes to build a human-first, technologically enabled healthcare world. I'm your host, Laurel Rockall.
Joining us today are two influential leaders in healthcare technology and digital transformation. Luis Giraldo, Vice President of Strategic Customers at OutSystems, brings over 25 years of expertise in low-code platforms and digital solutions. With extensive experience in business value consulting and his role as a low-code evangelist in America, Luis provides a unique perspective on modernizing legacy systems and enhancing digital transformation in healthcare. We are also joined by Krish Purushothaman, Vice President, Head of Implementation Services and Healthcare Strategist at CitiusTech. Leading the implementation services practice, Krish specializes in AI-powered low-code platforms and robotic process automation. His deep knowledge of technology strategy and implementation, particularly within healthcare, offers valuable insights into how these innovations can drive next-generation outcomes. Luis and Krish, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Laurel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, a pleasure is mine. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today about a really great topic and hearing your thoughts. And thank you for bringing your experience to the table on this. I want to first start with your beginnings. What got you into this really great career in healthcare technology and what's been that journey? So, Krish, I'd like to see if maybe there's an early career experience or a key influence that sparked your interest in digital transformation within healthcare.
Yeah, thanks, Laurel. So it's interesting that we start with this question. So going back in my earlier career, I was fortunate enough to lead an initiative at CMS, Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services, where during that time, they were trying to improve the patient access and the service efficiency through call center application implementation. I was fortunate enough to have that experience, lead a team, and kind of that was an eye-opener for me to understand the complexities involved in the healthcare operations. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, how technology plays a critical role in enhancing service delivery. So this not only improved the operational efficiency, but also significantly enhanced the patient outcomes. So that was an eye-opener for me. I witnessed myself to see the significant impact that created in members' lives, and also how the call center agents transformed the way they work and the way they serve their members. So this kind of shaped up my vision and kind of got into the digital transformation. And since that moment, I was just ensuring that we leverage the technology to deliver high quality care and better patient experiences. So that's how I got into this.
I love that you started at that level, so you really are experiencing from the call center and then going forward. So you have a much wider experience and view of how healthcare is really impacting a patient's life and that direct contact that they're having. So thank you. Luis, for you, you've had over 25 years of experience in business and technology solutions. So what drew you to the field of low-code platforms and that digital transformation? Is there a personal story or experience that shaped your passion for this?
Yeah, separate from that being a very long time and classifying my age a little bit, it's been a great journey. And not to go too far back, but I started my career initially with more kind of business process outsourcing, moving into then a larger software company, getting into a data company, and then now into a low code application development firm that is OutSystems. And so I think for me, the pivotal kind of inflection point in my career was understanding not just the end-to-end process for a lot of enterprise organizations and what they go through to support their members, right, and their suppliers and the whole ecosystem, regardless of sort of industry, but then getting into software and how software can enable that better experience. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But for me, when I started to understand the challenges that are arising with developing software and the proliferation of all these various products that are out there, and the difficulty that the C-suite has to not only maintain and manage costs, but also effectively be nimble and flexible enough to deliver on outcomes. And in this example, patient outcomes, right? So for me, low code was a force multiplier in that respect. And when I looked and evaluated sort of where software development was going, given the crunch on talent, given the urgency around time to market, and then managing cost along the way, it seemed to be a true accelerator for digital transformation for leaders. And so Krish is obviously the healthcare expert, but I've worked within healthcare as one of my top industries across that journey that I mentioned to you. And I'm excited on what's to come as far as how innovation in software can continue to drive better patient engagement and really more affordable care delivery.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for you, Krish, what trends and themes are you seeing and because with you being in healthcare and Luis looking at the low code, like this complementary relationship there between the two of you with what you're doing, are there trends and themes that you're seeing that are driving healthcare organizations to modernize their legacy systems, different challenges that are standing out?
Yes, Laurel. So healthcare organizations, as we see, right, they are constantly under pressure to rapidly innovate, improve the patient care processes for better patient outcome. And so a few years ago, it was like more of, hey, we wanted to get into an omni-channel base and we wanted to kind of get more patient engagement. But now this predictive analytics have evolved. We see a lot of push from the predictive and personalized care side of the world. There is a lot of data available for us, for healthcare organization to make decisions. And, with the modern healthcare, they're heavily involved in data analytics to kind of, collect the data, make sense out of it, and provide personalized and predictive care. And that's the way we can optimize the care that is being provided to our members. So we see, more of from a predictive and personalized care standpoint. And another trend that we are seeing is more of integration and interoperability. Now, as I was mentioning, data is, across the board. We have systems, working on silos, taking care of the processes, what it is meant for. But this integration, right, integrating all those systems and being able to talk to each other to kind of streamline the patient experience. And that's where I see that, we are moving towards how do we collaborate and how do we optimize in providing the collaborative care or connected care. So that is another area that what we are seeing. And obviously, not to discount the fact with anything that comes with healthcare, like has its regulatory compliance and security. And as constantly we evolve and the new standards come in. Healthcare organizations are constantly under pressure to get the systems updated. While we update the systems, right, it has to run efficiently as well and adopt the new processes that comes with the regulation. So that's another area that where we are seeing healthcare organizations are moving forward. And I know you asked about the challenges as well. Obviously, anytime when there is a modernization effort happens, right, it comes with a lot of challenges. Obviously, customers comes to us, or our healthcare customers specifically comes to us like with a set budget, right? It always starts with the budget, and then by the time they even think about some of these modernization, there is a little bit of a delay, right? In they looking at strategically and how they wanted to put it on priority to get it done. Probably it was needed yesterday. Like client just realized that they have to do it immediately. So that's where the faster development and agility comes into picture. Not only it's a one-time effort where you modernize the system, but also it has to be agile and nimble to be able to accommodate all of the future updates that we see. Constantly we see that how do we speed up the development? How do we accelerate the development to get the updates implemented and put it out in the market so that we can make our members' life easier. And obviously, we talked about integrating with multiple systems, right? So when it comes to the integration of multiple platforms, technology fitment is another challenge that our customers constantly look for, our healthcare organization constantly look for. And what would be the technology fitment that that can talk that can collaborate all of these systems, right? These systems constantly evolves with healthcare organization. There are some technology advantages on why they adopted a particular technology architecture to build that application. But after building all of this application, we need to make them to talk to each other. So technology fitment is another challenge that we see. Data migration, as we all get into this modernization effort, there is always a data migration effort involved. That is more of a complex process to migrate and understand the data and put it into the new architecture. So that is another challenge that we are seeing. As we layer in all of the modernization effort, we need to also keep up with the compliance and regulatory concerns. That's another thing to watch out for, and becomes a challenge, when we just move towards from one tech stack to another tech stack, or one platform to another platform. So that is what we are seeing across the board, and especially those are the challenges that typically we go through when it comes to a modernization effort. Laura.
So Krish, given these trends that you're observing and witnessing every day, where do you see the biggest push for digital transformation? Right, you talked a little bit about interoperability, so connectivity across what is a very complex ecosystem. You talked about sort of the challenges with managing costs, but still having to deliver with a quick time to market and accelerate the development in order to achieve some of those outcomes, right, from a patient engagement and just a broader value-based sort of healthcare experience. But what's really pushing that? What's driving that today? What do you see? Where do you see the urgency?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lois. The biggest push that we are seeing is driving better patient outcomes, right? And bringing in operational efficiency. And like you were mentioning, how do we integrate these different technology platforms together to talk to each other? So with a lot of fragmented data available across the board, it has been a constant challenge in order to accelerate the development and try to pull the systems together and bring in the data so that it plays a major role in providing personalized care. And personalized care is where we see the biggest push is coming from. And also, how do we get more and more engaged with the patient and get into a preventive mode of taking care of providing a quality care to the members. So on that front, personalized and precision care, right? We have all of the data available in the clinical setting. So how do we make sense out of it? How do we provide precise care to our customer so that we avoid the physician burnout and the workload that is on the hospital system? So personalized and precision care is one area that we see, one of the biggest push that is coming up. And obviously, we talked about patient engagement and their experience. And lately, after COVID-19, we are seeing more of a push from telehealth and remote monitoring. I know OutSystems have done an excellent job in rolling out application in that space where it makes it easier on the patient side to coordinate the care and kind of get the members scheduled for a timely care. So, we have seen telehealth evolved a lot. And in another area where we see is remote patient monitoring, right? Where we see, all of the clinical data can be gathered remotely and kind of processed to make predictive decisions and also try to provide a timely care. So that is another area where we are seeing biggest push coming from. And obviously, this traditional area of revenue cycle management, where we have lots and lots of workloads being done manually, it just because an EHR or EMR is not being able to handle that, we need to automate, right? That's where we can bring in more operational efficiency. We see push from that side of the world as well. And last but not least, right, you touched upon the interoperability piece of it, where we need to coordinate, and make sure that the health information is being exchanged for a better coordinated care. So those are the areas where we see Luis.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, so it sounds like when you think about patient engagement, it's really the entire patient journey, right? From awareness to booking to intake, providing the care, payments, and then the follow-up aspects of that. So it's really in and outside of the hospital when you reference sort of that payer provider experience for the patient. So there's a number of intersection points that are critical from a operational standpoint to being able to deliver that more streamlined and affordable care delivery model, right, across different care teams.
Yeah, agreed. So now let me ask you this question. So how do you see it from this fitting into this low code space, like in terms of the whole modernization efforts that fits into healthcare?
Yeah, so I think the themes we'll go back to a couple of times here throughout this conversation is I want to look at sort of the IT aspect of this, but then the outcomes. And so from an IT perspective, briefly, you touched on, talent, you touched on acceleration and delivery of the various applications and software that needs to support the continued innovation of the, ever-changing ecosystem that is within the healthcare space, right? So I think from an IT perspective more broadly, but specifically in healthcare, given the complexity, the requirement now to leverage both existing traditional developers to even, extending that beyond core IT is important. And so low-code application development, I think, plays a really critical role in that development effort, both upfront and ongoing, because we think about, CapEx and OpEx, there's a lot of cost associated with all of the ongoing changes related to these, managing these complex systems, right? So I think talent and speed of delivery and manageability of that over time is crucial. And I think that's very important from a healthcare standpoint. So that kind of on the IT side is one of the major factors that we look at. And then time to market is super critical. I'll share in a little bit a story, but you touched on telemedicine and really what I say patient or physician portals, being able to spin that up fairly quickly and then change that based on user feedback. So you're really bringing IT and the user feedback in a more iterative and agile manner to improve experience and reduce physician burnout. As we saw, what manifested during the pandemic was a number of organizations, cancer centers, for example, and others that did not have telemedicine in place. And so scrambling to get that into place. So I think that ability from an IT perspective is crucial to interact with the business and to support not just ongoing innovation, but continued development and efforts around building those applications across the ecosystem. And then as we kind of continue on the outcome basis, right, the interoperability. So that's really about how do you cut through that complexity to continue to deliver a more streamlined patient engagement model and drive efficiencies for hospital operations. And so I think low-code platforms, and I'll speak from my perspective being at OutSystems for almost 5 years, because we're full stack, there is a lot of flexibility in how we can support that transformation effort. And so I think one of the evaluations as any organization and the folks that are listening, when you think about low-code application development, there's a number of different options out there. It's finding the right tool and the right fit for purpose. And so if you need a lot of integration, interoperability across many different systems to support a complex case management or workflow within a patient journey, right, or across different care teams within hospitals, as an example, there's a tremendous opportunity to preserve those investments that you've made today and augment and supplement that with platforms like OutSystems to deliver on a better integration or orchestration of that with that front end capability, which ultimately is what we're all after, right? Is driving more the user experience and doing that cost effectively. So I think, Krish, there's a lot of opportunity in healthcare, and tying back to a number of the themes that you hit on with, revenue cycle management, patient engagement, a lot of portals, and then cross-care team collaboration from a hospital management standpoint. So
yeah. Thanks, Luis. So you brought up a couple of interesting points, right? When I think about traditionally being building a tech stack and then building an application, it takes a longer time, right? And you brought up, like, from low code standpoint, right? Agility is more important, and then acceleration of building platforms, that is also important, and then integration, right? You touched upon all of those key points, but can you tell me on how, when somebody comes to us, right, asking for I want to build an application, why would I look for OutSystems, right? Obviously, you touched upon some couple of points where we have seen success. So if you could share some insights on that, so that would be helpful.
Yeah. So I think when you look at, I'll kind of pinpoint on in a specific area, and I think you can elaborate on this with your experience, Krish, as well, which is we find that when there is an emphasis on experiences that span, a fairly complex workflow, that typically is an area to evaluate to determine, okay, what you have currently, can it support that complex, let's say, patient journey or aspects of it, let's say onboarding the patient and offboarding a patient, right? And so I think that those are areas that are interesting to kind of look at because it requires an intuitive and elegant sort of pixel perfect front end experience to really drive adoption, both from the patient and from the healthcare side. So I would say those complex journeys, you talked about sort of claims adjudication, maybe a little bit within revenue cycle management. You talked about sort of pre-authorizations. You talk about patient scheduling. Those are just some that come to mind where it's not just one particular experience in isolation. Is how do you bring that streamline and that patient experience that's effective for and productive and streamlined for the patient, but also that you have hospital operations as an example supporting that. So I would say that's an area that we've seen a lot of success in portals. And as I mentioned earlier, remote care is where you mentioned, so in and outside the hospital. So the continuation of that patient journey, how do you extend that experience, consistency, leveraging the data and presenting that in a way that's consumable for patients, and that interaction back with their physicians and specialists, depending upon their conditions. And then I think the efficiency play is one where we see that's pretty pervasive across hospitals. So with all of the patient engagement and supporting that journey in mind is, okay, how do you start to bring and streamline multiple core systems? So whether you're leveraging Epic, HL7, Cerner, you have these core systems that have a lot of legacy, but important and critical data that you can't just rip out, right? So we always say, keep the core clean and look to extend that with platforms like OutSystems. And I think that's the big opportunity, Krish, I know that we're starting to see is there's identification from the healthcare community that there are tools and platforms that can support that innovation, modernization without a big lift and shift effort. And so I'll point to a quick example that we can kind of touch on, but we had a large cancer center that did not have a telemedicine portal in place when the pandemic hit, and they were scrambling to figure out what they should be doing to support that, because they went from literally from hundreds of thousands of appointments per month to nothing. And so they were able to spin up a telemedicine portal within 4 to 6 weeks and went from 0 appointments to 20 to 50,000, and then quickly scale back up to hundreds of thousands per month. And so that level of impact in that situation obviously is very clear, but we think about many other examples within healthcare that speed is important, but then speed with quality and scalability is also crucial, right? So how do you continue to manage that change, bring the data in, present that, and support an integrated and more streamlined and cost-effective technology stack?
All right. And you talked about the integration. You talked about pulling the data from EHR and various EHR. That is not easy.
Sure.
And you also talked about the scalability, which is very important. And the good thing that we learned from you is that the scheduling, like how we went from zero scheduling to all the way volume of. So as we see all of these things, right, we see there is a growing demand. When I say growing demand from the industry, that puts a lot of pressure on low-code platforms to see how low-code platform is going to scale, right? So on that perspective, is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of how low-code platforms, especially OutSystems, scalability and performance, and to ensure our customers, somebody is looking for OutSystems as a platform to build their application, we run into these questions of, hey, that's probably the reason being, customers tend to ask this question because of low-code platform is loosely coupled, right? There is a platform which builds a web page. There is a platform which kind of builds core application. In OutSystems, wherever you go, you see it at the top of the rank. So in terms of scalability and performance, and how the platform can handle the growing demands of the healthcare need. So if you could talk about that, that would be helpful, Lois.
Yeah. So it's a question that is often asked, scalability, right? Enterprise grade. And I think there's a lot of options out there. And there's a lot of good tools that can spin up a very simple application intake type, application within a given department. But as you look at, back to the earlier comment of interoperability and kind of extending and integrating across core systems and multiple systems, 5, 6, 7, OutSystems has 20 plus years of building out those integrations. And so there is a what we call the Forge, which has, I think, over now 6,500 integrations, connectors, so to speak, of which any system that you could probably think of. And so we continue to invest in that. And so we always say the premise of the platform that OutSystems has built is largely with the integration in mind and the front end experience, knowing that systems and tools will always change. And so I think OutSystems is built from the ground up from a full stack development standpoint that you can leverage the data, the business logic layer, and the front end. And so that flexibility and that full stack capability lends itself to scale effectively and support, whether it's millions of users coming in or very complex integrations, and scaling up to support obviously the demands of the business. So that's from our perspective, that's kind of what has been the focus in the continued investment of the platform. And we'll talk a little bit about generative AI and how that's embedded within within the platform. But I think the scalability, you can point to a number of customers that are running with millions of users, also integrating into multiple ERP systems. I have a large customer that I'm working with that is in the pharma and biotech and instrumentation business, and they're supporting over 30 plus ERPs and transitioning off COBOL code to support legacy modernization, with 20 to 30% of their staff retiring in the next couple of years, right? So when you start to think about these bigger opportunities where, okay, you have to look at different ways of supporting that, you need to look at the different tools. And I think there's a lot of low code tools that are out there, but not many are enterprise grade to support what we would say mission critical applications. And so that's kind of what I would point to, Krish, is our customers, and then just really the roots of how OutSystems has been built from a full stack development standpoint.
Got it. I think the quick wins for us is, right, in terms of modernization, anything that runs on legacy mainframes, or with a very old platform like Sybase and things like that. So that's going to be a quick win for us. But I have to ask this question. Without this, this conversation will not be, I cannot, complete this conversation. So about security and compliance, this constantly it kind of comes up in our conversation with healthcare clients. So if you want to touch upon the security and compliance, obviously there is FedRAMP certifications, SOC 2 certification, you name, right? We have PHI, PII data that kind of now with the cloud-based model, right? We have data sitting everywhere. So we wanted to make sure that any organization that we get involved, we wanted to make sure that it's safe and secure. So from that standpoint, as a platform, how do you address it? Like how does the platform handle it? Is there anything that you can share from that standpoint? How we are handling it from platform standpoint?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's obviously it's an important question, and we can get into a lot of the robust testing and protocols that we've gone through to basically support and ensuring the safeguarding of applications for customers. But to give you a sense, we have over 200 automatic security and risk controls that have been built into the platform. So those can span from a policy and procedure standpoint, application protection and data protection, continuity, availability, and infrastructure protection. So when you think about companies like Takeda and Roche and Thermo Fisher that are all big clients of ours, Humana, they've gone through and without question have tested and ensured that the platform here at OutSystems can support these very complex applications that are needed to be built. So I would say there's a number of security measures there, encrypting and securing the data throughout the user experience, which is crucial when we're thinking particularly around patient data and PHI and PI data. logging, data entry, and data transport and interoperability. So all of that is safeguarded. There's also the data protection from a proper like data handling and storage and transmission and instruction of any are critical to ensuring application data security. And then from an uptime standpoint, continuity availability is always going to be a key factor in mission critical applications within healthcare and with obviously many other industries. So uptime and proactive planning and service level determination is part of the platform. So that there's a lot of security controls that have been built into that. And from an infrastructure standpoint, we are a platform as a service. We offer flexibility as well. You can deploy on-prem if need be, in your own private cloud or on our managed service. And so that flexibility also requires us to make sure that we have the appropriate infrastructure protection, right? The back end authentication, authorization, validation, and all of the security protocols around preventing incidents on that perspective. So that's what I would say, Chris. It's just a well battle tested platform across the enterprise for thousands of customers that are using the platform globally. So Krish, we talked a lot about agility, right? And the importance of interoperability across what is a very complex ecosystem. You've been working with AI and digital tools in healthcare now for some time. Can you share some examples of where you're seeing that innovation and where, you talked a little bit about there's the operational aspect of this and then there's the engagement, right? So can you share a little bit of where you're seeing AI and low code kind of being explored and evaluated to support both of those areas?
Sure, Louis. So in the general sense, let me first touch upon like what we are seeing in the industry and then get into the low code flavor of it and how AI is getting utilized in terms of further speeding up the acceleration and kind of improving the quality of care. So from that sense, like we see a lot of innovation happening, especially in the diagnostic space. And I know there is Google Health DeepMind, right? They have built an algorithm to kind of do the image processing and kind of understand, kind of have the algorithm understand and predict the diagnostics, right, from the imaging process. So that is something that is happening, in the global industry perspective. And there are so much advancements happening in the predictive analytics space, like we were discussing, in terms of improving the patient care and improving the patient engagement. So with a lot of clinical data available, there are a lot of algorithms being leveraged to kind of identify the high-risk patients and personalize their care and prioritizing their care. So that way we can avoid further complications. So there are a lot of algorithm developments that is happening on that space. And we touched upon the remote patient monitoring as well in a few minutes ago. So that is also constantly evolving. How do we constantly get information on the chronic conditions and try to kind of take that data live and get the treatments prioritized and in some cases promptly provide them when there is a need. So those are the broader areas that we see advancements happening from leveraging more of AI tool standpoint. And from the low-code standpoint, there are a couple of easy wins that we see. For example, virtual care as a health assistant. Obviously, with the burnout that we have in the healthcare industry and the overload that is at the hospitals, we see that these healthcare assistants come in handy, where virtually you kind of gather the information on what's going on and then try to come up with a solution where how this particular patient should be routed to efficiently. So virtual health assistance is kind of coming up. It has been there in the industry, but now with all of the data available, right, how do we personalize this information? It is not anymore like you put one symptom and then you kind of get a general suggestion. So that is not happening. That we are moving away from that and kind of giving a personalized care. And we see a lot of workflow automation now leveraging AI tools. For example, scheduling an appointment and prioritizing the appointments, right? It used to be like, oh, when there is a patient need, just go ahead and schedule the call. Now we have lots of data available, whether this patient is really needing, how they should be prioritized, and whether they need a routine care that is being missed that may lead to a major issue down the road or major complication. So there is a lot of AI being leveraged in the automation space, and also we see AI coming into play, especially in the provider space on claim denials. A lot of claims that are being processed from the provider standpoint goes to payer and then gets denied, right? Some of those are operational inefficiency, right? Either eligibility is not verified, or it's not we don't have a right code, right modifier, and day of service incorrectly mentioned and things like that. So that is another area where we see this AI getting plugged into and making some smart decisions to avoid a certain pattern that is happening. And there is also you talked about bringing in clinical data from EHR EMR, right? So there are so many things that can be done in EHR EMR, but there are certain things that we couldn't do until we collect the data. So there is what we see is like, when we collect the data, we can deploy AI, or we can leverage AI more of making sense out of the clinical data, providing prioritized care, or getting more of a specialized or personalized care to a patient. So those are the areas that where we see, but bottom line, right, AI tools are being leveraged for better patient outcomes and improve the efficiency in the process, and obviously that overall impacts the quality of care that a member gets or a patient gets.
Yeah.
And so I know I talked about a lot from my side. How do you see it from your perspective, Luis?
Yeah, it's so there's no shortage of use cases, as I'm sure you've come across, Krish, in relation to generative AI. And I think from my perspective, I'm kind of back to it, as I discussed a little bit earlier. I think from an IT perspective, generative AI is complementary, I think, to low code, because it just continues to be an acceleration of how we take what is a very laborious process around software development and make that much quicker. So I think that being embedded within the software development lifecycle and developing or driving further productivity is going to be crucial, right? I think that's the big opportunity. I know a lot of IT organizations are witnessing, and that's something that we've invested for, and we have AI embedded within that to drive quality assurance around the code that's developed, and also almost that, like you were referring to, a companion tool that is ensuring sort of the right checks and balances for a developer across that app development lifecycle. So I think that's the IT perspective. I think we see the continuation of that, and I think we're well positioned to support that that effort to address some of the the discussion we had earlier around talent shortage and extending development beyond just core IT, because we know that there's a shortage, right? And there's going to be no stoppage of applications that need to be built in and outside of healthcare. Then on the use case side, we actually are doing quite a bit of work internally as well around things like language translation and things like ticket deflection from a call center or customer support standpoint. So I see that as some examples. I think that the interesting one that's a broader use case that one of our clients has developed on our platform that I think might be interesting for the audience is this chat kind of a solution where you want to harness generative AI by, for instance, knowledge management, so knowledge documentation internally so think about healthcare with the different paperwork and all the manual processes for a patient and for physicians and the care team, of bringing that into sort of a chat feature. So we always say, harness the power of generative AI, but bring the human in the loop. And that's where I think we come into play, is how do you manage Gen AI and how do you start to bring the human in the loop from an interaction standpoint to support that effort? So we're seeing that kind of knowledge or companion tool that's tapping into these LLMs, and we're seeing that use case kind of prop up in multiple areas within healthcare, and outside of healthcare, and within pharma, biotech, and all that. Think about research and development. Think about some of these things that are highly administrative and intensive. And you got scientists and others that are doing research. You want them focused on more value-based activities. So how do you streamline that? How do you reduce a lot of that friction in the let's say the advancements of drug development, et cetera? So I think that's the interesting part that I see. Some of those internal efficiencies will have direct implications on the patient, and then for all of us, right, from a healthcare and outcome standpoint. So
yeah, it's interesting you brought up that point where the platform makes it easier for a developer to connect with a model that is available in the industry. So that opens up a new set of possibilities in the healthcare space where you can easily integrate with the model or invoke a model and then get some decisions based on and kind of from the implementation standpoint. That was. Yeah.
And Krish, I mean, I think we can have a whole session on generative AI and sort of the safe experimentation that's going on. But I think going back to the patient at the center of providing those desired outcomes, right, that many hospital groups and payer and providers are trying to deliver today in a more innovative, right, and intuitive way. What are you seeing from a patient experience? So, like, as far as the primary focus areas, I think you touched on them a little bit earlier on the claim side, and then just on the remote care delivery and other things. But what are you, from a patient engagement, what are there specific trends and areas that you're seeing that are top of mind where this modernization of leveraging low code application development can drive that outcome?
Yeah, definitely, Lois, that from the low code standpoint, the good thing about low code standpoint, right, it's kind of super easy, especially with OutSystems. What we have seen is, right, it takes a couple of weeks for a business to see what they are developing, unlike those traditional waterfall model, right? You wait for 6 months and see what's coming up. Unlike business is seeing a lot more values with the low code platforms. And from a patient engagement standpoint, or leveraging low code from improving the quality care, we see a couple of areas. Recently, I wanted to touch upon the couple of things that that I have been in discussion with. So there is a use case where we touched upon the EHR, EMR, right? They wanted to pull the data and then put it in a dashboard for clinicians to work on specific work items. So there you go, right? You have integration. OutSystems can come in and make the seamless integration. Obviously, there is going to be still challenges with connecting with the EMR or EHR. And obviously, it's easy, like, to build a digital front door or a digital application, and then have a AI infused in it to get a next best action. So that is one area where we see, like, okay, OutSystems can come in and build an application, create a picture clear, like you were mentioning, right? Picture clear UI dashboard with a better UI UX experience, and infuse the next best action so that we can, the clinicians or the operations folks can come in and then immediately pick on the item that is really has to be worked on priority. So that next best action and the digital front door of opening up, a dashboard so that they can see what's going on. So that is one area. And then obviously streamlined appointment scheduling is another area where we see this low code can come in, like, obviously some of the priority based appointments and care gaps, and those areas is definitely something that pull the data and build a workflow quickly in low code platforms so that it gets business sees the value immediately. So obviously the last one, like I touched upon, claim denials is another area where we see low code platform can come in and build models and then kind of predict where the issues are going on so that we can reduce the claim denials from the payer. So those are the areas that I see. I know I touched upon a lot here, Lois. I want to ask you one question on, especially from the healthcare standpoint, right? In the prior implementation, where do you see, like, your clients have seen high value realization in low code platform?
We're seeing hospital management systems. There's a particular case that we had where we're supporting a client that's deployed, basically a modernized hospital management system within weeks, supporting that omni-channel experience for healthcare facilities. And as an example, just registering a patient used to take 10 minutes, and they reduced that down to 25 seconds. And then as a result, too, when we think about data quality and we think about, right, the historical issues with data accuracy and they also were able to see a 60% reduction of duplicates and errors in patient medical files, right? So there is implications not just on streamlining the experience, but also on accuracy as a result. So I think there's a great opportunity. So that's a particular case around a hospital management system. And then we talked about remote monitoring and triaging. Medtronic is a client of ours. This is always nice because it's a well-rounded value realization story, which is they saved 50% from an IT budget standpoint relative to this project, and then 80% less data for healthcare professionals to review, right? So when we talk about physician burnout, we all want our doctors focused on the client, not focused on the administrative tasks that need to support and ensure all the various steps, right? So if we can take that administrative burden out of the physicians and the care teams, then that obviously repurposes their time on the patient. And then over 450,000 sessions triage, right? So this has downstream implications, not just from an IT savings standpoint, but from the healthcare professionals and care teams, into their ability to conduct important procedures and triaging into different specialists, for example, within hospitals. And then the last one I'll touch on briefly is physician portals and mobile applications. We know, and Krish, you and I have had this discussion before, there's a number of the core systems in place today that serve a very important purpose, but there is gaps, right? We know that there's gaps for instance, in certain engagement areas of what we're talking about here across the patient journey. There's mobility challenges. And so I think this is about coexistence. This is not about typically replacing a lot of what's in place today. It's how do you simplify your technology stack and support that? And with the physician portal and mobile applications, that's really that front end experience where increased adoption, personalization we're seeing, and then integrations across that revenue cycle management, clinician scheduling, clinician credentialing, data warehousing, identity management. So that's another customer that's saved, I think, upwards of $2 million in shifting off their legacy system into a more streamlined physician portal and mobile application. So those are three, Krish, that we're seeing, I think, that are indicative of a broader demand that we see across hospital groups and in general payer provider space. I wish we had more time, but we have a number of examples where customers are integrating into core systems, and they're doing all of those things, whether it's integrating into those an HL7, patient scheduling, hospital operations, pre-authorization forms. So really from end to end, transforming the entire hospital network and patient care delivery.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of value, I'm sure, that must have realized as part of those initiatives. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, those are great examples and just a wonderful conversation all around. And you both touched on a lot of really great points there. I mean, from the personalization, patient-centric modernization of these systems, and security and compliance that's needed to be kept at the forefront, the assistance from AI-powered low-code platforms, and letting practitioners be practitioners, do what they do best, right? And taking some of that busy admin work out. And that was a really great conversation. And I want to look ahead here and as we wrap things up, Krish, what emerging trends in low-code technology do you think will have the biggest impact on the healthcare piece? Do you see advancements in AI in this and in low-code like really shaping the future of healthcare systems and patient care?
Yeah, definitely. So from my perspective, I'm looking at a couple of areas where it's going to have a biggest impact in healthcare as we see the industry unfolds with AI, Gen AI. So one critical capability that we are looking at is more and more of advanced integration capabilities. There is a need for it. And then the other area that what I'm looking at is more of AI-driven workflow management or workflow automation in terms of predicting things, predicting an appointment, predicting an patient care, or, wherever you go, there is always data available that you can kind of come up with a predictive suggestion or predictive action on what needs to be taken in order to optimize the healthcare. And then the third one is obviously, the industry is moving towards how we can get onto a real time, right? Real time data is really crucial in making all of these decisions and also optimizing the process. So those are the three areas, Laurel, that I'm seeing. It's going to have a biggest impact on driving the low code into this healthcare arena.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, for you, Luis, as we conclude here, are there any final insights or any takeaways that you would like to share about the role of low-code platforms and the digital transformation as in terms of modernizing healthcare systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, I'm not the healthcare expert, but I think there's natural lag with certain industries of adopting certain more, just disruptive tools and accelerating modernization. They're just generally risk averse, whether it's banking, financial services, and healthcare. And so I think healthcare always is trying to catch up a little bit, but I do see, to Krish's point, a continued demand around more performance-based outcomes for institutions, right? And there's more metrics, there's more data available, there's more technology to support that. And so I think really, for the purposes of this conversation, the three areas that really I see continued innovation with support with the CitiusTechs of the world and platforms like ours is continued personalization of outpatient experiences, right? There's going to be always ongoing effort and support to drive a better intuitive experiences in and outside the hospital. And so from cradle to grave, as far as, your whole journey. And I think that's really important. And that will continue to be to be able to cost effectively deliver what is needed with, staffing shortages, right? And burnout. And so managing that is important. So, and that kind of brings to the second one is streamlining operations and care beyond the hospital. I think, you have your efficiencies and automations that are happening already within payer provider space, but I think that continuation outside the hospital will be important for lifestyle and other things as it pertains to health and minimizing sort of, patients with different with different diseases or conditions. And then, Krish mentioned it earlier, and I think this is kind of the third one, which is improve patient care with enhanced analytics. I think that kind of stems off of the patient experience, but I think the analytics piece now is there's more and more information at the fingertips of the patient. And so I think with those three, there will be continued investment. And I think what we're seeing now is healthcare institutions across, payer provider, life sciences, pharma, biotech are adopting technology like this because they recognize they cannot move fast enough with the demands of where things are going and the competitive nature of what needs to be delivered. So I think, we're seeing more and more of adoption of that, but it's also where do you start and how do you drive that transformation effort, right? So I think it's going to be still a heavy emphasis around governance, a heavy emphasis around how do you set up the teams to support the model, near term, longer term, and then how do you continue to drive better interaction with IT and the business to continue that transformation effort in the future. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting as a layperson hearing these conversations of what's going on in healthcare technology and really the exciting future for both the patient and the practitioners and what that's going to mean for both sides of that and the whole end to end really for that whole process. And so I thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to sit down with us today and bringing your expertise to the table on this topic. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Appreciate the time.
The Shaping Healthcare podcast is brought to you by CitiusTech, a leader in healthcare consulting and IT services. To find out more about CitiusTech, visit CitiusTech.com. To listen to more interesting insights on healthcare technology and innovations, search and subscribe to the Shaping Healthcare podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want to share any feedback or would like to be featured in our podcast, do write to us at CitiusVision@CitiusTech.com.